Welcome to the Golden Crown Literary Society's virtual series. As GCLS pursues its mission of supporting women-loving women literature throughout the world, the virtual series strives to connect readers and writers, feature talented authors, and celebrate the diverse communities that are vital to our stories. April is National Poetry Month in the U.S. We hope you enjoyed today's virtual series event featuring some of the poets of the women-loving women community. If at any time you lose your connection, we suggest you leave the event and rejoin. Please also take advantage of the chat feature. Flashpoint Publications is proud to be the sponsor of today's GCLS program. Flashpoint welcomes poets' words as enthusiastically as they recognize those of fiction writers. The poetry that lives and breathes between the covers of these 4 books is a testament to the value that Flashpoint places on this genre. And now it is my pleasure to introduce your moderator, a wonderful poet herself, Elizabeth Hodge.
Welcome to our poetry webinar, and we're going to have a few people read some very interesting stuff, but I want to make a few little announcements. We're going to have readings first, and you'll see that everyone has a very, very different style, and then at the end, once you get to know us, then we're going to have some questions and banter and back and forth. And if anyone out there has a question, I think there's a comment or a chat thing. If you want to zap it up at the end, I'll see if I can get to you. So let me introduce you to our wonderful poets. The first poet I'll introduce you to is El Monique. El Monique, where are you? Hey, you, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon, everyone.
So I hear that you're a poet and raconteur. Is that the case? Okay.
That is the
Tell us a little
case.
bit about yourself.
That is the case. I am a storyteller in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
I use poetry, like most people utilize oxygen, meaning I definitely need it to breathe. I've done just about everything you can imagine in the world of poetry, spoken word, slamming, open mics, published work, commissioned work, choreo poems, just about everything, and I love it.
That sounds wonderful. I can't wait to hear you read. So I'll come back to you in a moment, but one thing I want you to think about. In one sentence, how would you define your style?
That's difficult.
So that's what you got to think about.
Thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking?
You said one sentence, I'm giving you 2 words. I think it's my job to be the voice of those who have had their voices muted. And as long as I am able to get my audience to feel anything, I've done my job. And that's where arts activism comes in. So I think that's how I would describe what I do.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you for taking a spontaneous question there. Sorry about that. Okay, the next person is Lisa.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm cool.
So, let's see, I have a little bit about you. You practice acupuncture, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And you're a queer white settler. That's kind of cool. So tell us a little more about you.
I live in Guelph. That's in Southern Ontario. I'm a very tired parent.
How many kids?
Well, just one. That's enough to be tired.
Yeah.
She's great. I'm not complaining about my kid, but we're currently in our 3rd shutdown. So I'm not taking any surprise questions today.
Okay, then no surprise questions for you.
Yeah, but I'm really happy to be here. And this is the online reading I've done since the start of the pandemic. So that's pretty cool.
Great. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Autumn.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for tuning in.
So tell me a little about yourself.
I was putting in the chat earlier with folks. I'm currently in upstate New York with a couple of good friends. The vaccinated life is pretty amazing to feel a sense of normalcy. My first book of poems came out last year, so moved my whole book tour online. Ended up doing like 30 virtual shows, which it was great to meet a lot of people, but as you know, pretty awkward and strange.
Yeah.
But my 9 to 5 is as a diversity and equity coordinator at a school in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So do you want an impromptu question?
If it's taking one for the team, then sure.
No. Just anyway, what's one sentence define your poetry?
I think vulnerable family narratives might be. I'm lucky, Monique. I had some time to think about that. I was like, one sentence. That's hard. But I grew up in the slam poetry world, so my poems definitely lean in that world. Yeah. I always have appreciated oral poetry, I think, more than written poetry, or just a different love for it, I guess. And yeah, excited to hear all your poems or all the different kind of work you're reading. With Leah, I'm such a fan of your books. It's so cool to be in a reading with you. Yeah, excited to hear everyone's work.
Well, great. Well, now it's you've introduced Leslia, so Leslia, what's up?
Happy Poetry Month to everybody. I'm Leslie Newman. I write in all forms, though poetry is my first love, but I also write children's books and fiction and nonfiction and all that. And what I have, my show and tell. Autumn, you didn't show your book long enough for me to see the title, so I want to see that again. Cut to Bloom. Okay, it looks fantastic. So I have a pair actually of memoirs in verse. I Carry My Mother and I Wish My Father, which is about my parents' journeys at the end of their lives and how I took care of them, each one in turn. And I also got to think about one sentence. So
Awesome.
Marie, you were put on the spot, but we had a little time. So I would say if I had to define my poetry in one sentence, it would be lyrical and passionate poetry of witness.
Awesome. So far, I'm loving all the definitions. Well, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
So let's see. Sandra, where are you?
Hi, I'm Sandra DeHelen. I'm a poet and playwright and novelist, and I write everything. But I've been writing a poem a day throughout lockdown, so those are over 400 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I write a lot anyway. I have 3 collections that are out in print, all from Lunch Point Press, and I have one forthcoming. I'm going to read a little bit from each one of those books.
Great, thank you. Do you want to define your poetry?
Well, I know a lot of what I write has been called, it's a style that's been called confessional, which I hate the term, and I think I prefer to call it testimony or bearing witness or plain old storytelling. Any of those would do.
Mm. Okay. I like all those forms as well. So I would ask you a little more about confessional, but I'll wait till later. All right, Ocean, here you are. Hey, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm not a professional poet, but I put a bunch together. I self-published this book. It's called Love You Like a Woman. Mm-hmm. And they tend to be more emotional, romantic. Not all of them are, and I have tons more besides this. And there's pictures in here, which is kind of cool. The book doesn't have the colored pictures, but on the digital it does. I'm better well known for probably writing a little more in the terror department. Some of you might recognize this. But I just wanted to put this out because I wanted to show the variety I have of being able to write not just only things that'll scare the pants off people. So that's why I put this little book. I mean, I had written all these for probably decades, a lot of these, so I just kind of compiled them, put them together.
Mm-hmm. So are you a horror poet?
No, the poetry, no, I wouldn't say no. Most of the poetry would be what I would call, emotional, and I like the positive emotional. There's a few that might be scary, but not really horror. No, I never really thought about writing horror poetry. I suppose I could try it.
It's actually kind of cool, but I mean, you can email me later and I'll tell you about somebody.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, everyone else said their style in a sentence, and I think unconventional, unique, and emotional. But just like my stories, what I try to do, which we probably all try to do, is to move the reader somehow, just get that emotion. And so that when they're done reading, whether it's a poem or a story, they go, wow, that's, if I can do that, then I'm pretty happy.
Great. I feel like I need to do a plug. So I can turn like this and go get my book. No. See, mine's also a memoir, a love story in verse, and minimalistic, and it won a bunch of awards. But hey, that's my plug. Okay, I'm done with me. That's all about me now. So, all right. So we're gonna do. Oh, what do you think? 5-7 minutes each of you. You ready for do that? You prepared to read? So, Monique, are you prepared?
I am prepared.
Please share.
Pretty much so. I feel like there's so much to say after listening to my fellow poets. I do other
I'm
writing.
sorry to interrupt you, Monique, but didn't we miss Emily? I don't think Emily introduced herself.
I didn't see Emily on the chart. Emily, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry.
No worries. I'll go really quickly. My name is Emily August. I'm an associate professor of literature at Stockton University. I'm into the macabre and the morbid and gore and violence.
Yeah.
That's kind of my bag. So my poems, to sort of describe my style in a sentence or two, and also to give a kind of blanket content warning, my poems really deal with intergenerational trauma and domestic violence. And so the speaker in my poems often kind of aestheticizes violence as a trauma response. And so, yeah, my poetry, there'll be some kind of graphic images and discussion, but I just wanted to kind of warn folks up front to be aware of that content. And that's me. Hi, everybody.
I'm so sorry. All right. So, Monique, now you get to read.
Okay, so good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Monique. I'm also a staff writer for Q Notes newspaper. And today I will be reading from my book, From Collards to Callaloo, Poems and Letters to Assata. My book is definitely a labor of love and a little bit of an expose. I published this a few years ago. For 11 years, I kept the secret that I had a granddaughter, and I didn't lie about it, but it was just not something I discussed because I didn't have the narrative that many grandparents have. If you are one, or if you have a grandparent, when you hear that phrase, people's faces generally light up and they want to hear stories of how wonderful it is to embark on that journey. I did not have that narrative. I live an out life as a lesbian activist, and the mother of my granddaughter is bigoted and homophobic. And so, though she will be turning 14 in July, I have never met her. It's important for me. Yes, it has been, and it's equally important for me as a writer, as a feminist, as a woman, that we take control of shaping our own narratives. So 11 years in, it occurred to me that the only narrative she would have of me would come through the lens of a bigot. So I put together this little book, which is 9 letters and 9 poems. The letters are written to her at every stage of her life, with the intent of sharing with her everything I would have wanted to have the ability to share with her if we'd had a personal, intimate relationship. So 3 letters to her as a little girl, 3 letters to her as an adolescent, and 3 letters to her as a grown woman. In between, there are poems, not necessarily written to her, the poems, but embracing themes that I wanted to share with her and share with the world. From Collards to Callaloo is not a pity party. It is a journey of healing. And since writing it, I have found that there are many people in the LGBT community who are faced with the pain and burden of not being able to connect with loved ones, to share love, just from living their lives as their authentic selves. Mm-hmm. So today I'm going to share 2 poems with you. And the first is entitled 6 Little Intos. The into is a structured poem. It is the Black poet's response to European aristocratic poets and literary enthusiasts who would say that Black poets can only write in free verse because they don't have the ability to write in structured form. So that's how the into was born. The structure is 2-4-6-8-6-4-2. And this is a combination of 6 of them. Thank you. Little Vietnamese voices sing pledge with us. Afros shine like suns in our streets. Revolution is brewing. Mom's having a baby. He will be my second brother, her last one, the first one with an African name. Fat cheeks and dimpled hands will follow me around. Happy little brown girl, Prospect Park, my playground. Skipping down 7th Avenue, the 3 of us eat at Purity Diner. Little brown boy and me growing up in these streets, drinking Kool-Aid, playing Scully, revolution brewing. I name my doll Kizzy, because little people need to be able to see strength and power in faces that resemble their own, even if they're just dolls. Today and tomorrow, it will be the babies, budding revolutionaries who will change water to wine with their freedom of speech. 6 Little Intos. My second poem was written quite a few years ago, and I will say, sadly, still relevant. And it is entitled Status Update. Status update. If Black lives matter, where in America? Where in the world is the agape love I keep hearing so much about? Is it reserved purely for church sermons, blog posts, parent-child relationships? Hashtag, I can't breathe. On November 18th, 1986, the prenatal nurse beckoned for a doctor, and after 9 hours of induced labor, augmented by bellows of, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my God, I gave birth to a 5.5-pound chocolate baby boy. My introduction to selfless, sacrificial, unconditional love, my firstborn man-child. A mother's joy and pain filled my tear-laden eyes, for I could not surmise how I would raise this little being to have confidence, respect, and cultural pride, without the bitterness that comes from occupying the side of the list where members who fit the criteria for endangered species reside. And so I held my new little baby and quietly cried for myself, my son, and all the mothers who were charged with the challenge of raising children they prayed would simply survive, while wondering if the person or persons who would later coin the phrase Black Lives Matter had actually lied years after being hung, burned, and dragged behind pickup trucks. We still don't understand why we're still on our knees praying for some display of humanity, hoods on, hands up, unable to breathe. I'm beginning to forget the names of all the victims. One name every 28 hours is becoming too much for my brain to recollect, and my soul ran out of space years ago. So I'm beginning to forget the names of all the victims as well as the assassins. They're beginning to meld together in this festering foul mix of genocide wrapped in apathy. So I'm beginning not to care or worry if I appear uninformed and or out of the loop, because I missed the last slaying of an unarmed Black being gruesomely played on CNN and replayed and replayed and replayed and replayed, 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 replayed on every network and cell phone, tablet, or monitor capable of pixelating such atrocities. I'm sick and tired of angst-filled rallies held on blood-soaked streets, void of redemptive solutions and brimming with empty activism speech. I'm sick and tired of the soapbox rantings of social media trolls. That baby I had is now 35 years old, and I'm still holding my breath. Because as his Black lesbian mother, we are both at risk of becoming yet another hashtag Black Lives Matter.
That was stunning. Very good. Thank you so much. Absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Lisa?
This first one is called In Defense of Purple, and it's basically a love poem to spring, among other things.
Okay.
In defense of purple, the color of Disney villains and the soft fist of your spleen. Named for shellfish boiled for days to make dye. The grape hyacinth raising a constellation of phalluses above mid-May snow. Not Easter eggs or the walls of a grade schooler's bedroom, rather a Crown Royal bag heavy with marbles. Purple as seventh and last in line, most ultra wavelength. As culmination, which is to say, survivor. The scapegoat refusing to hide bruises or hickeys. Could have told me at 11 to quit dabbing concealer under my eyes where the thinnest skin shows everyone everything. Which is why, before leaving, I wrote my name in purple Sharpie on the walls. And why, come July, I'll be deep in the blackberries, forearms cross-hatched in blood, teeth and tongue dark as eggplant, as plum, as hunger. And this next one's called Facts About Yellow. The sun is white, but speaks in yellow. Explosions in the sun birth particles called neutrinos. So small they pass through our cells. There's often a cost for not feeling something, a biological tax due later. But in this case, our insides are lit with tiny bits of sun, and it's okay. Plants are sun eaters, but houseplants left in the dark go yellow. The toddler's missing scarf is yellow too. So are the trash cans, golden fossils, glimpsed through the window, announcing that a reckless sky has set itself on fire again. Late afternoon in December and the air is liquid amber, ecstatic. You can tell, even though you never do get outside before the houses swallow the sun and it's all over, even though you're trying to remember the last time you weren't tired. And doesn't everything hinge upon this? The yellow grass revealed by thaw, crooked and tender, and something older than mercy, never not moving, a yellow square sliding across the floor and halfway up the wall as we tip towards a longer dark. And this next one is another love poem. I don't know how it is where you folks are, but in Southern Ontario, it's getting harder and harder to get out to wild spaces because more and more people need to get out to wild spaces. And, you know, there's signs up saying don't park here, and there's no trespassing signs everywhere. And it's like on the scale of things in this pandemic, it's not the worst thing that's happening, but it's kind of awful. So this is a poem about a place I love. And this poem's for Maureen, if she's here. It's called Trespassing Again at the Everton Cascade. Mud sucks at my feet and ankles. I am up to my hips in a misfit stream. Oh, she's here. Hi, Maureen. This note thing is cool. Forever too much. Oh, I'm going to start again. Sorry. Don't feel bad about putting that note, Maureen. I love that you're here. Trespassing again at the Everton Cascade. Mud sucks at my feet and ankles. I am up to my hips in a misfit stream, a river too wide or too small to have eroded the passage in which it flows. Forever too much or not enough. The forest above me, pocked with bowls and cylindrical shafts where ice water flung rocks at the ground, some lodging in cracks in the bedrock, drilling in to carve columns with the force of rushing waters. It must have been so loud for so long. My mom studied geology. Do I still hope for comfort in a geology lesson? You could say I'm a misfit child, but I still miss her sometimes when I look at rocks she would like, or their signature in the grooves spiraling across walls, tracing the paths of what swirled in the meltwater vortex. There are people I love who might die before it's safe for me to touch them again. Some things won't wash away. This is only my pain, unless it's yours too. The water just hip deep. I wish to be more present, don't we all, for something other than regret as anchor. But if the river is the suture that grief seeps around, why not throw all my limbs in, scatter the crayfish, then climb out to breathe and drip on this new shore?
That's lovely.
Thanks. Okay, cool. This is the last one, and it's another love poem, and it's called Explanation. The sum of the world's online data in 2018 was 33 zettabytes, which, despite sounding like a school of tropical fish, is a huge number. And while saving to cloud sounds cool, moist, and easy, like our data simply swims above us, I only recently registered that, of course, the whole of the internet, the contents of your draft folders in all 3 email accounts, that photo of the 1,400-year-old ginkgo tree with a hallelujah of yellow leaves, every Bitcoin transaction, DIY plumbing video, and dormant LinkedIn profile is captured in warehouses that are called server farms, although they grow nothing, being arid corridors lined with millions of racks of computers and backup computers, the hum and exhale of which is soothed by innumerable fans, whirring, dogged, while the less energy-intensive methods of preventing meltdown of precious machinery require water in amounts that Google will not disclose, all of which forms an argument for sending fewer emails and writing things on paper, which, yes, is also complicated. But while I know the futility of individual solutions to global problems, still, tonight, when I pause mid-fold by the laundry basket as you begin to undress before bed, it's because I'm picturing the next poem written in slow cursive with a rain-wet finger trip across the small of your back. Thanks.
That's lovely. Thank you. Bravo. Autumn?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much to people who read so far. So this poem is called The Forgotten War, and it points to the erasure of narratives told from a Korean or Korean American perspective, or other non-dominant perspectives. And it's especially important to share in the times of such rise against Asian folks, as well as rising violence and continued violence across many communities of color. And I'm just really grateful for my POC, my Asian American author ancestors, especially the queer ones, who've really helped pave the way. It has a couple of footnotes that I'll read to you before I start reading the poem. 1, The Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War because of its absence from US public attention. 2. Japan colonized Korea for 35 years before the Korean War, forcing everyone to take on Japanese names and speak only in Japanese. Secretary Taft sanctioned this occupation as long as Japan agreed the US could continue to control the Philippines. 3. Hundreds of thousands of women were forced into sexual servitude by the Japanese military until the end of World War II. American military personnel continued to visit the comfort stations until they were closed in 1946. The Forgotten War. 1. My grandfather was a soldier in a war where only white men could be heroes and my people, the herd, to be saved. 3 million Korean civilians killed, pocketed like coins for democracy, which is to say he was born a pawn, born to forget who pulled the trigger. 2. Grandmother never talks about her childhood and hoards everything. Cabinets of ketchup and Spam, toilet paper drying on the sink's edge, teaching us to pick up each grain of rice, eyeing the outskirts of her plates, never talking about the Korean cried out like teeth, born to forget the name her mother called her, foraging instead for words like hunger and please. 3. What is a plea in the language of men collecting 500,000 comfort women, many only 12, most dying from multiple STDs? What does a person deserve after years of days like that? Surely more than the dollar, the few hundred out of thousands of comfort women to remain received as reparations. 4. The word Han in Korean means to celebrate your survival in silence, knowing you weren't the only one to pay the price. Means seeing there is less than a grain of rice and still setting the table. Means that when they steal your shovel, use your hands and plant the garden anyways. 5. It took my aunt years to divorce her abusive husband, choosing a bruised neck over an empty mouth. She now works at a 7-Eleven, borrows money from my mom for her daughter's wedding, tries to still her voice into a frozen lake when she calls. Her choice to leave her husband, the same as leaving the church, single mothers being outcast in Korea, which is to say, being a woman is the loneliest thing if you're trying to survive. 6. My mother, in trying to survive, made us speak English at home, knowing we wouldn't be able to defend the family in our mother tongue. She says the word Han is my birthright, something every Korean owns. But who am I to define this prized ruin, this fertile ash, far from fluent, saying thank you like a foreigner, craving to fit into the language of home and memory, split from the homeland we wouldn't have survived, queer and single-mothered, split from holding each other's words in our mouths like our own, missing what was never ours. Yet I am this fool, coming to praise, if not love the fracture, knowing it has allowed us to choose, if not forget. And my mother can be more than a survivor. And I can be more than a child who is trained to never ask for more. All right, so that was a poem from the book, and I'm gonna read a new one for y'all. I've been thinking a lot about gender recently, especially because my sister just had the first baby of the next generation. I'm thinking a lot about how gender does and doesn't map across culture and language barriers, how I explain what a non-binary identity means to a language that doesn't hold such a concept.
Right.
So this is about that. And thank you all again for the invite and including me. It's called Between the Lines. You suspect the roommate I bring home for Thanksgiving is someone I want around for Christmas too, so you say, if you're gay, I'll kill myself. You suspect after I break up with her and stupidly fall in love again that it isn't just a phase, so you say, I love you still. You don't like the new last name I take on with my once wife, changing the one word we once shared that paints our history in one thick line, but you say, I accept you no matter what. I come to the kitchen after getting dressed for a wedding, having held up 4 ties and 3 different suspenders to my pressed shirt, worried you'll notice everything is from the men's section, or that I feel more at home in them than in the kitchen. You shred potato pancakes by hand. You walk over to me slowly. I get ready for you to say something I will try hard to forget, but instead you silently untwist my suspender, hold my shoulders for a beat after, and say you look handsome, understanding somehow I wouldn't want you to call me pretty or beautiful, though you've called me that since. Whenever I'm at your house setting the table and waiting for you to fill it with dinner like I am in college again, you always offer to do my laundry. I only say no, that's okay, and not the other things I wish I could say out of a different mouth. If you wash my boxer briefs that aren't the boy shorts sold at Victoria's Secret, maybe you would know it's not a phase and be more ready when I say words like top surgery and hormones, and will you still introduce me to your relatives? You stop trying to gift me jewelry, the soft gold bracelet that matches the necklace my sister loves, and you still don't know that the first button-up shirt I strapped over my chest was from your closet. My ex pretended to understand everything you did not. Didn't need me to translate my pronouns into a different language until the day I told her my most faceted stone of a secret. We were at a favorite neighborhood restaurant, the one we cried at and made up in, ate bread pudding like it didn't make our stomachs hurt, and she tried, I think, not to cry as I told her I might be somewhere on the trans spectrum, but she cried anyways and secretly hoped I would shovel the secret stone into a tiny pocket of a pair of women's jeans I forgot I owned. She had said, forever, no matter what, in all the ways you'll change. But acceptance isn't cursive on a piece of beautiful turquoise paper you rewrite and rewrite again. It isn't dreaming about how your life might be easier if only just. It isn't the picture of my long hair she kept on her phone. You knew, I think, when I asked you to stop calling me daughter and explaining that I didn't want you to call me son, that I wasn't joking. You knew, I think, that Google Translate couldn't help this time. Still, you say the right things like, I'm sorry, I love you, I will try. And I'm trying my hardest to let that be enough until you can bring me home to your Catholic Korean cousins and not say, this is my daughter or my girl, but say, this is my Autumn, and be able to hold all the silence that will follow. Thanks, y'all.
That's lovely. Thank you. Emily.
Hello.
Hi there.
Thank you, everybody. This has just been so rich and so beautiful. And thank you to all of our attendees as well. I'm so glad you're here. This first poem is called They Say Trauma. My grandfather was a long-haul trucker. When he was gone, it was passable, living in squalor. When he was home, he beat his children within an inch of torture. When they grew up, each sibling made themselves a promise. They were so careful. Only once my mother spanked me. I was already too old for it. She called me to her lap and her knees cracked as I draped over it. I laughed as she swung. I taunted her over and over. It doesn't hurt, I told her. She wept the whole way through. I looked behind me as I left the room. I saw her shoulders bent in self-loathing. Even at the age of 10, I understood I'd broken her. We never spoke of it. When my grandfather died, the family gathered at his property, a single wide trailer and a rotting shed. He'd settled far north at the state's most rural edge, hunkered among a century's hoard of useless and discarded objects. Rusted milk jugs, crusty overalls, cast-off parts from vintage engines, containers and containers of batteries bleached of their acid. I was always the studious one, freakishly smart right out of the womb, so I got to pick through his leftover piles of books. I found a moldy dictionary buried under one of the stacks. It's so seductive to believe that this is the neat and tidy sum of what he bequeathed me. But instead, I often wonder if his legacy is how I came to let a person I was fucking beat me. They say trauma is returning again and again to the moment of harm in an attempt to reclaim and revise it. An impossible task. You were never present to begin with. They say trauma is remembered in our cells, even passed to our children. Maybe I never had a chance then. Maybe his hands were already hammering me before I was born. All right. This one is called Resident Taxonomist of the Great Lost and Found. Heaven was the hand that finally managed to strike you back. Angels appeared at your bedside, robes dirty at the hems, emerging from a wasteland of cumulus gases, mouths stinking of sulfur. They clawed themselves ragged, fighting over your body. They dragged you by the hamstring, by the shoulders, and by the scruff, toppling the stacks of books and papers, crowding the floor of your trailer. I suspect you walk crooked now in the afterlife. There, you catalog each shattered finger, blackened eye, and bruised jaw. All the bodies broken by domestication. Their souls have been processed for healing, but their carcasses remain, littering the archive's humid hallways. You tend to this detritus like a scientist. Each organ and appendage suspended in mason jars you filch from the kitchen staff. Someday, when you retire, they'll place your skin among the glass vessels too. It will curl up, embracing itself like a baby, like something that hasn't been harmed yet.
Powerful.
Thanks. All right, and this one is called The Descendants. We couldn't forgive ourselves for becoming statuary, for inheriting the bent posture of the cursed. We couldn't expect the universe to rewind itself, or the punishments to be reversed. The rusted car on the lawn, our only possession, waiting to be repurposed. But it couldn't be stripped of the moss that clung to its frame. We gathered each Easter to rehearse the childhood occurrences when we were bent beneath the wounds that tutored us. It was a ritual penance to balance the silent year ahead, when the memories couldn't be coerced from their moist habitat inside our mouths. When we cradled our guilt because its fat made us warm, protecting our joints. When we coddled our shame because it made us human, because it felt like thirst.
That's fabulous.
Thank you. And the last one I'll read is called The Split Fig. When we tired of stained glass, we manufactured halogen. It was holy because it shined. but its chemistry would not heat, despite how we breathed with devotion, our mouths hovering over the bulbs, transferring energy in a warm fog. We could not understand what we had done wrong. In penance, we fastened our eyelids with a hot glue gun, choosing unknowing. We pinched our noses with clothespins, and the smell of the split fig rotting at the tree's roots could no longer admonish us. Like this, we discovered anesthesia. This was the lesson of science. Our suffering turned out to have some permanent use. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Leslie?
Hi, everybody. Happy Poetry Month. I'm going to read from a pair of memoirs in verse. You can see them perched up behind me with pictures of my parents. Like many lesbians, I was given the role of taking care of my parents. First, my mom and her illness from cancer and COPD, and then my dad, who let's see, they called them episodes. He had mental episodes that kept compromising his capabilities. So I'll just read a few poems from each. This is a long poem called The Deal, but I'm just going to read one section from it for now. My mother's doctor tells me, here's the deal. She's got 6 months to live, a year at most. His words lodge in my gut, a heavy meal. My mother's doctor tells me, here's the deal. I'm very sorry, I know how you feel, but keep your chin up, don't give up the ghost. My mother's doctor tells me, here's the deal. She's got 6 months to live, a year at most. And this poem has a refrain that I grew up hearing my entire life. It might be familiar to some of you as well. A daughter's a daughter. My mother declares in her hospital room that my fate was decided deep down in her womb. A son is a son until he takes a wife. A daughter's a daughter for all of her life. She's telling me I am in charge of her fate while both of my brothers are deemed second rate. As she's born unto death, I will be her midwife. A daughter's a daughter for all of her life. I argue, I reason, I try as I might. I learn from the best how to put up a fight. My mother and I are no strangers to strife. A daughter's a daughter for all of her life. The papers are signed, I'm to do as she said. If she cannot be cured, she would rather be dead. Can I cut the cord of her life with a knife? A daughter's a daughter for all of her life. And this is a math problem. It's called The Problem.
Okay.
Multiply 2 packs of cigarettes a day by 7 days a week for 52 weeks a year for 69 years. And what do you get? 1,004,640 9-filtered Chesterfield Kings and 1 smoldering mother gone up in smoke. And I did the math, so that is true. This is again from The Deal. At last it is my mother's final hour. No more second chances, no reprieve. The stench of death is bitter, sharp, and sour. At last it is my mother's final hour. My father has lost every ounce of power. He wipes his runny nose upon his sleeve. At last it is my mother's final hour. No more second chances, no reprieve. And this is a poem that gives step-by-step directions. It's called How to Watch Your Father, Watch Your Mother Die. Sit beside him on a folding chair beside your mother's bed. Place a box of tissues between you. See how he takes your mother's hand in both his own and strokes it like a small, wounded animal. Do not speak. Do not turn on the TV. Do not shatter the silence around you. Let time pass. Listen to your father sigh. Listen to your father sob. Hand your father a tissue whenever necessary. Ask your father if he wants something to eat. Ask your father if he wants something to drink. Ask your father if he wants to go for a walk. Do not press him when he says no to everything. Remember, the one thing he wants is impossible to give him. Let more time pass. When your father gets up to go to the bathroom and says, hold mom's hand, hold your mother's hand. When he returns, give your mother's hand back to your father. It belongs to him. Do not tell your father what the hospice nurse told you. You need to let go so she can let go. When the sun sets, gather the darkened room around your shoulders like a cloak. Watch your father's undying love take your mother's breath away. So my parents were married for 63 years. They were high school sweethearts, and my father appears in my mother's book and my mother appears also in my father's book. I thought he would die like 5 minutes after she did, but he actually lived for 5 more years. And so I got to know him in a very different way because I took care of him. So I'll just read a few. Oh, actually, I'll read you a poem that my dad wrote for me. It's in the front of the book, the only poem my dad ever wrote, and he wrote it for my 60th birthday. Science tells us that to live, one needs air and water, but to have a better life, one must have a daughter. To have one so talented, caring, and bright even makes old age all right. Sweet.
Yeah,
Thanks, Dad. My dad was an attorney. Poetry was so out of his experience, but he gifted me that. And I think it's one of the best gifts, maybe besides my wedding ring that I ever received. So these poems are just a little different. The title does double duty. The title also is the first line of each poem. So you can see the title's up there and then there's 3-line stanzas and it just goes right in. When my father wakes up on that first sweltering night of that first scalding summer, soaked in sweat like my mother when she suffered those terrible hot flashes 40 years ago. He stumbles out of bed and lumbers to the archaic air conditioner, fumbling for the right button to bring it back to life with a wheeze and a groan and a thump. Next, he shuffles across the faded carpet, slides between the worn sheets, and lifts the torn blanket to cover my mother, who will surely grow stiff from the frigid air blowing between them as she had for more than 60 years. Who could blame him for forgetting she had left him and was now slumbering on the other side of town, wrapped in a shroud beneath the stony, stubborn ground? How he missed her old, cold shoulder. So this is a description of one of those mental episodes that my father started having. Heaven can rely on you, sings a chorus of strapping young men in sweet, deep voices that blend inside my father's head. Don't you hear them? He asks, then shrugs, unconcerned about being the sole witness to this tender serenade. He holds up a finger, signaling, wait, wait. The men have stopped, but then they start up again. Gouda, 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 my father sings along. Like the cheese, I tease, trying to make light of this newest delusion. My father frowns, it isn't funny, and cocks his head like a puzzled puppy, trying to make sense of what's being said. The sound, any sound, a precious gift, since he doesn't hear much these days. Not the telephone's startled and startling shriek, not the blasting TV's blathering newscaster, not the neighborhood dog's insistent sharp bark, not the rain's hard hammer against the sliding glass door, and not a peep from the little boy who appears at the foot of his bed night after night, his eyes as blue as my father's, before the cataracts floated in, 2 puffy clouds across his morning sky. Who is he, Dad? I ask. My father shrugs, then lifts his finger again. Yes, dear, he says, I will, dear. He looks towards my mother's chair, and out of nowhere, I hear her too. Her voice, the weak whisper of that terrible last day. Don't worry, sweetheart. She cups my cheek with her worn, withered hand. There's no problem so terrible that it can't get worse. Gouda, 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 sings my father, happily off key, swaying in his seat, his ancient voice cracking like a young bar mitzvah boy's. Deedle, 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 zizza, zizza, zizza. And then this happened. It was not a stroke of genius. It was not a stroke of luck. It was a stroke of misfortune that befell my father, leaving him crumpled at the foot of the driveway next to the garbage, waiting all morning to be picked up. And then this is the last poem in the book. So the book begins with my parents separating with my mother's death, and it ends with my parents reuniting with my father's death. So now they are together again. My mother is at the bridge table with Loretta, Gert, and Pearl when my father finds his way to heaven. Sit down, dear, she says, patting the seat beside her and barely looking up from the hand she's been dealt. The game is almost through. But my father is too overcome to sit. He stands and stares at his beloved, free of wheelchair and oxygen tank, happily puffing away on a Chesterfield King held between two perfectly manicured fingers, sipping a cup of instant Maxwell House, leaving a bright red lip print on the white china cup. Her hair, the lovely chestnut brown it was the day they met, her face, free of worry lines, the diamond pendant he bought her on their first trip to Europe, glittering against her ivory throat. She looks like the star of an old black and white movie who would never give him the time of day, but somehow spent 63 years by his side. I missed you, my father tells my mother, leaning down to kiss her offered cheek. Of course you did, says my mother, who always knows everything. She plays her cards right, and after Loretta and Pearl and Gert fold, she stands to let my father take her in his arms, and in their heavenly bodies, they dance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sandra?
Hi. Yeah, I'm going to read a couple from each of the published books and one from the forthcoming book. So this is the first one, Desire Returns for a Visit. This is love poems that follow relationship from the very first glance all the way through the end of the relationship. Desire returns, okay. You get what you pay for, and pay for what you get. If you look back over my lifetime of loving, you might think I'd picked up most of my lovers at a yard sale. They were never the right fit, always a bit worn, and if still unused, it was for a good reason. Some of them faced a rapid turnaround. I put them right back out in the yard in a box marked free. Some of them lent themselves to my friends, as if I were that kind of woman. One or two abused me and my children, strangling us with their extra long sleeves, tight knits, and zippers that wouldn't stay up. I was well and truly grown up the day I realized I could choose my own lovers of the correct fit by shopping somewhere other than resale. And then I said, "You don't ever want to see me again. It's not me, it's you. You tried to make it work. You really did, but you just aren't feeling it. You thought you loved me, and when you had doubts, you thought you would grow to love me. The sex was great. I don't need to have any worries there. It's all you. You just can't trust anyone. It's a shame, really. You want to commit. You want a wife. You want to make a home. But you just can't handle any unpleasantness, any arguments, or anything like that. I understand, right? What can I say? I'll be fine. Find someone else. I'm not too old. I still have it, have time, and rest assured, it was not my fault." And then a couple from Lesbian Humor is Not an Oxymoron. We are not girls. A butch, a trans woman, and a femme walk into a bar. Gay bartender says, "What'll it be, girls?" They draw back, draw in breath to protest, as he points behind him to the large, sparkly pink sign, Ladies' Night, Margaritas, 2 for 1. Then in unison they speak. Margarita, please. How a lesbian is like a chicken. She clucks over her peeps, the dirt, scratches in the dirt for a tidbit, gets her feathers ruffled when the cock crows. She also has eggs and may lay one if the mood suits her. A lesbian chicken will flock with her hens, cackling, pecking, sharing the food with her sisters and other chicks. Feminists don't like the word chicks for women. Not all feminists are lesbians, as once thought. Of course, not all lesbians are feminists either. Lesbians, like chickens, nest, feathering their homes with tomes on how to be in the world. With a giggle and a gaggle, they live with one eye looking out for a good place to light after a short flight, and wee hens to call their friends. And these are from Poetry for the People, which came out last December. It's been 1 a year so far.
Okay.
Message from, this is a heavy verse, not light verse. Message from a caged child. I am locked up, waiting to learn how long. When will I see my people again? Why did they leave me here? Where did they go? I need more food, more water, a bath. This silver paper is not a blanket, and I am cold. Other kids speak, but I don't understand them. Grown-ups stand in corners, never looking in my eyes. I talk to myself. Yesterday, I cried out loud. Today, my tears fall without sound. I screamed when they took me from my mother. She let them take me. I will never scream again. And this is COVID Dreams. COVID nightmares made a comeback last night. Hours of dodging people without masks coming too close. I dreamed about a broom, too. Time to sweep something clean. In real life, I dream of moving house. I long for Portland and proximity to my family and friends there. I imagine small social distance gatherings in which I see loved ones' faces above their masks. We could sit 10 feet apart and still hear and see each other. I'm sure it would be hard not to hug, but the love would be palpable. Today, Lon Mabon, who tried to outlaw gays in Oregon in the early 90s, today said he'd rather be beheaded than wear a mask. Please make me president for a day. And finally, this one is from the forthcoming book. It's called A World's a Stage, Life in 5 Acts.
Cool.
This is Letter to Myself at 17. You're already a wife and mother. You work full-time to help support your family. You're taking night classes to get a high school diploma you'll never see, and you wonder whether you'll escape this entrapment with a battering husband, as miserable as you are in a life you didn't bargain for. What can I tell you? I swear it'll get better, but time is involved. A lot of time. Change your reading habits. Start with Plato and a paperback dictionary. Read on the bus on your way to work. Stop worrying about your looks. Instead, focus on your brain. You're not fat, you're not ugly, and you are far from being stupid. Do not listen to your husband. Listen to the small voice in your head telling you life will get better. Fill your head with lofty goals. Let your imagination soar where you can't yet. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And last but not least, Ocean, are you still here?
Oh yeah, I'm here. Absolutely. Let me get to, that was amazing, all you guys that read. That was so awesome. Cool. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna read a couple poems from the Love You Like a Woman book. The first poem, can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes, thank you.
The first poem, When You Make Love to a Woman. And when you make love to a woman, know you are making love to her mind. Take her places she needs to go, calm fears that haunt her so, stimulate thoughts and ideas inside, pull from her things she has too long had to hide. And when you make love to a woman, understand you are making love to her soul. Massage the amazing, brilliant beauty that lies deep. Encourage release of secrets she no longer needs to keep. Become lost and absorbed in the thrill as you both discover and take each other to places as have no other. And when you make love to a woman, embrace the idea that you make love to her heart. That is her inner tenderness and softness which beckons you, that aches for caress. Then watch as larger and more spectacular her love grows. As each moment you hold her breast tightly pressed against your own. And when you make love to a woman, remember that the physical is merely the path to her mind, soul, and heart. Her body is simply where you will start. As each tingle, flush, heated rush you send, guides and draws you to where desires will end. And when you make love to your woman, oh, the enormous thrills, chills, and delights it does send when that woman is your lover as well as your best friend. The next one is Love You Like a Woman. This one, these are pretty short, but this is the title of the book. Let me love you like a woman should, like only a woman could. Let me do things to you that you won't forget. Let's do things to each other that we won't regret. Let's create passion that we've long dreamed of. Let's move together, same breath, same song. Let me polish your beauty that lays so deep. Let me lie with you until you sleep. Let me hold you until you feel the peace. Then let me kiss you, take your hand, and let me love you like only a woman can. And I'm just going to do one more short one because I think we're probably going over our time zone here, but forbidden fruit. For decades, effortlessly, I passed by forbidden fruit, never once desiring its succulent juice, never once stopping to stare and wonder what delight it might share, never once dreaming at night, imagining its splendid delights, never once feeling the thunder of its hunger, until now, until you.
That's lovely. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I had a really good time. How about you guys? Did you have a good time? Lovely stuff.
It was great.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And
Wow.
I go back to Golden Crown.
The GCLS would like to thank all the poets today. Great job, everybody. Amazing stuff. Our virtual series will now go on hiatus until after our conference in July. But every Saturday throughout May and June, we'll bring you Goldie finalists reading from their nominated books. So please watch our website and our social media for more information. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.